coming, everyone. Very excited to be at GeekGirlCon for my first ever time, but not my co-panelist's first time. We're going to start by introducing ourselves. So we're talking about memoir comics and autobio comics today, and I have come up with some questions and we have some anecdotes to share, and hopefully it'll be interesting for everybody to hear. So my name is Maia Kobabe. I use the pronouns EM-air. I'm up from the Bay Area, California. And some of the major themes of my work include gender, identity, sexuality, and some environmental issues, a little bit of anti-fascism in there, probably more to come in the future. And I would say a major theme of my work that I've only brushed on, but I would hope to explore more in the future, is asexuality and aromanticism. So those are some things that I've thought about a lot, but haven't sort of had the opportunity to write about quite as much. So would you introduce yourself and say your pronouns and your themes?
Yes. I'm Ashley R. Guillory. She, they. I'm asking Maya what my pronouns are.
You can have any pronouns you want, my friend.
Thank you. I'll take those too.
Yeah.
I do a lot of medical, I guess I have quite a few medical issues. So I have done quite a few comics about my endometriosis and my interstitial cystitis and queerness in general, and my wife. I love writing comics about my wife. And I would love to write more about disability, I think. My mother was diagnosed with long COVID this past year, and I feel like we're not talking about it enough. So, yeah, I'd like to write about that and autism, I think. Mm-hmm.
Yes, let's cheer for autism right at the top. Thanks, everybody. We have the right audience.
Excellent.
All right. Fantastic. So I would consider diary comics, memoir, and autobiography very overlapping genres, but not quite the same. So I kind of wanted to define how I think of them, even though it's maybe not a dictionary definition, just so you sort of know where we're starting at from this conversation. I would consider diary comics or daily comics, a practice of perhaps drawing every day. Also, we're talking comics, but this could also be just journaling or poetry. Something that you're maybe writing a little bit every day, and you're not setting out with a theme in mind. You're just saying, I'm recording an interesting conversation, incident, thought, memory, dream, etc. And perhaps larger themes may appear if you continue that practice over a long period of time, but it's not explicitly sort of more essay focused. Whereas I would consider memoir is generally writing about your own life, but organized around a theme. So obviously my book, Gender queerness, those are the big themes. Some other ones that come to mind, like Lucy Nisley's Relish, is her early years, but through the lens of food, recipes, and sort of the family connections to the like cooking and chef industries, I guess.
Yes. Also, kid gloves. That's just about being pregnant.
Lucy Nisley's done a lot of sort of themed ones. She's done one about marriage, one about pregnancy, one about aging grandparents. I have so many favorites. I mean, I love like George Takei's They Called Us Enemy. Again, he doesn't talk about his entire life. It's focused primarily on his childhood when he was in a Japanese internment camp as a young person. Or there's Alison Bechdel's Fun Home, which I think has sort of a slightly broader spectrum of themes, but we've got like family, queerness, death. So I would say in general, a memoir, you can pull out 1 to maybe 4 major themes of the work, whereas an autobiography would maybe cover a person's entire life or entire careers and a little bit less theme focused. And obviously a memoir is autobiographical.
Yes.
But in my memoir in particular, there's a ton that I left out. Like there's huge swaths of my life that I didn't even touch on because I was like, that's not relevant to the theme of the book, which is gender and sexuality. So I'm not also going to get into like, I don't know, like, so, extraneous stories about my family that aren't sort of linked
family
to them.
history, all your aunts and uncles,
Yeah, so that's kind of how I'm going to be defining these terms. Also, I wanted to start by saying, so if you're attending this panel, it is entirely possible you have maybe considered writing memoir. And I wanted to say that if you have ever considered writing memoir, if it's ever called to you, I think you should do it. I think, please consider this your sign from the universe that
just write it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You should write your book. In part, and like, when I was writing my memoir, I was only like 28 when I sold the book, and I definitely struggled with some feelings of like, who wants to read a memoir by a 28-year-old? Like, no one's gonna find this interesting, and then they did.
Too interesting.
Perhaps too interesting, indeed. But specifically, I personally have found writing memoir just an extremely useful tool to clarify my own thoughts, and also to talk about things that I, as a young person, felt very, very alone in. I felt very alone in my gender confusion. And when I shared it, a ton of people said, I relate to this. And that made me feel less alone in my experience and more connected to community. And in general, just like my experiences were not unique or solo. They weren't,
Yes.
I was able to release a lot of shame and fear and doubts. Yeah, and it made me feel much more connected to people. And I think that a danger we will likely be facing in the years to come is people becoming more and more isolated and feeling more and more alone and more at odds with the rest of society. And if memoir can be one of the tools in your toolbox to connect to people and feel connected in community, I think it's a really great tool. So grab it and use it if you're called to. So
Especially with, I don't know how many of you are in fandoms. This crowd.
at this con,
I know. I've done quite a bit of Star Wars fan art and comics, and that's a great way to learn who to block real fast, because I have real strong opinions, like Luke is gay with the Chanel boots, and a lot of people disagree with me. So I'd much rather find community with those who see even the title of the comic and go, yeah. And you're like, yeah.
yeah, and your comic that is titled Luke is Gay is about that, but it's also partially a memoir piece, and it's about your relationship to the story over time.
Yes.
And people have also really connected on that.
Yes. As we were talking about Alison Bechtel, I was like, oh yeah, Dad. That's a thing I write about a lot because I don't talk to him for reasons. Which is always a funny when people come up, and I have a zine at our table called "And Then I Never Spoke to Him Ever Again," which people often think is about an ex-boyfriend. It is not, because I am gay. And then when people are like, "Oh no, this is really relatable," I'm like, "I'm so sorry."
I'm sorry that this one hit.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Good luck with that. Also, yeah.
That's perfect. I wanted to talk maybe a little bit here about responses to our work. And I would say, obviously my biggest memoir piece is genderqueer, though I've done a lot of other short pieces like For the Nib and just pieces I've put on my social media. And yeah, like I did not know what to expect for the responses to that book, but I would say the number one response is people saying, I had no idea anyone else in the world felt this way. And that has been such a powerful type of response to receive to really personal work. And then you've had some very fun responses to your work as well. Do you want to share some of yours?
Yes. My favorite response I've ever gotten is I posted like a 3-panel comic about snuggling with my wife in bed. And you can see I'm wearing a beanie. I always wear a beanie. I wear one to bed. And that was the response. Everybody was like, why are you wearing a hat? And I was like, that's not what I thought people would respond to this, honestly. But
this comic is about love, and you're making it about my sleepwear choices.
Yes. An odd decision. Yeah.
Okay, so we've each talked a little bit about some of the different pieces we've made. I wanted to talk about, how do you sort of decide, yes, this is something I want to write about? Like what sort of seeds an idea, or what can inspire idea, or how do you know an idea is sort of worth putting the time in, especially if you're working in comics? It is a time-consuming media.
Yes.
So how do you decide if an idea has like legs, if it's sort of worth producing? What is it that makes you go, this idea and maybe not one of a dozen others?
I feel like if you can't let it go, you gotta draw it, otherwise it'll just haunt you. Like the memories that sparked it. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a couple examples, or?
Mostly I'm thinking of fan art pieces where I'm like, I have to draw that. And then you have a bunch of other things to do. Sorry, I'm going to gather a thought. I'm working on a comic pitch right now for a graphic novel. And part of it was like, this the story that I want to tell has not been told before, at least not in graphic novel form. And so I feel like there is a need to have othered voices in the conversation. It's about pregnancy and fertility specifically, because I feel like that also is going to be something that we are unfortunately talking about a lot soon. And so I have a mighty need, like you said, to figure out, like, it's a journey, and I need to figure it out for myself, and hopefully other people can read it and be like, oh, damn. Oh, PG-13.
Yeah. The signs, our name tags told us to keep it PG-13, so we're going to.
We're going to try.
Yeah, I feel the same. I feel like sometimes I feel like I'll get a thought stuck in my head, and it's almost like a line, a thought or a line that comes to me, and I keep repeating it to myself, or I keep finding myself bringing it up to people in conversations. And sometimes if I have this thought and I can just talk it out maybe with someone, and then I'll be like, okay, I released sort of the need to communicate that. But if it's been sort of pushing at the door of my mind for a few days or a few weeks, and talking it out still hasn't sort of released it, then I'm like, okay, this is something I think I need to write about. And one example, I have a short comic on my table called Evacuations. I'm from the Bay Area. We've had a lot of wildfires in the area that I live. And 3 of the 4 years of the first Trump administration, I had friends who had to evacuate, stay at my house during fires. And I just found myself thinking about this. Well, 3 out of 4 years in a row, friends having to stay with me. Sometimes friends arriving with their hair smelling like smoke. And I just couldn't sort of release how strange and sort of apocalyptic this felt, but also how joyful it was to be able to provide like a safe shelter for friends who literally for fleeing their homes. And so I wrote about the 3 times that friends had stayed with me, including one friend who stayed for 9 days. And during much of that, we had no idea if their house was still standing or if it had burned. And so that was one of those ones where it was like an idea that just I just couldn't let go of it until I sat down to write it. And then that was kind of the sort of releasing the idea out of my brain. And I felt like I really was able to say what I wanted to with that piece. And then I wrote it, and then talking about writing obviously as a living author, no story is finished yet.
Yes.
So my friend, at the end, we go, oh, my friend was able to go home. 6 months later, they had to evacuate again. And that time for over a month. And it was just like, well, that's okay. It's, you write one piece and it can be like an essay, and you have to end it somewhere while knowing also if you're still alive, the story is not done.
Yes. And some things you start to write and you have not found the correct vantage point from which to tell the story. That's been a lot of, I have a lot of, writing about my mother, good, not like the father part, good. The mom stuff is good, but I just don't, in working on my book pitch, my agent so kindly pointed out that I needed to refocus a section which I had mostly been telling about my dad. And then I was like, oh, wait, what if I talk about my mom instead? Then it opened up a whole new world to explore, a happier one, which really changed the tone of the story. So there is something about the perspective, whose story is it, and is it time to tell it now?
I think we've also both had a couple of projects that felt like false starts. We started writing them before we were ready to write them. And that's part of the opening scene of Genderqueer talks about me being assigned to write about one of my demons and trying to write a piece about gender and being like, this feels very bad. I am not enjoying the experience of writing this. It feels very vulnerable. It feels very uncomfortable. And I had to go away from that topic. I did not write about gender again for 3 years. And I needed 3 years to kind of learn and grow and think and talk to people and just kind of figure out what I was actually trying to say.
Loosen up. I think you need to get a little loosey-goosey. That's hard because our professor in that class was very... Also, we met in comics grad school. I don't know if we talked about
we might have forgotten to say, we have known each other for, what?
A decade
12
almost.
years this year? 12, 13 years? Something. I don't know, I'm really bad at math.
No.
Anyway, it's definitely over a decade, and we met in comics.
It is 12 years. Yeah. Okay, yeah. But yes, Mari Nomi taught that class. And if you've ever read any of Mari's books, you will know that they are personal.
Very personal.
And raw.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, because you've been working on your book pitch for quite a while at
Way too long.
this point. Well, it takes its own time. But yeah, I don't know if you've also had that experience of like starting something and being like, this needs to cook longer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's been a lot of times where I am too close to it. It happened too recently, and I'm like, I need to wait at least several months or longer for it to digest before I tell anyone else about it. And you're very similar as a person who has sat and very closely watched you react to all of the book bans, lawsuits, everything that you've been dealing with. You are very cautious in your reactions, which is good. You're not reactionary, which is
I'm deeply committed to slow takes only, cold takes only.
Yeah.
No hot takes from me.
No hot takes, Taurus style.
Anything worth saying will also be worth saying next week and doesn't need to be said today.
Or several months from now.
Or maybe even next year.
Yeah.
I mean, why rush it?
It's the thing I've learned from you is just like, sometimes it could just wait. Yeah.
But yeah, I think, and part of that waiting, I wanted to bring this up also because if there are sort of earlier writers or beginning writers or people who are, again, thinking about memoir but haven't started yet, it is possible you may think this is the big topic I want to write about, and it may include perhaps touching on some past trauma, and you may run into that feeling of like, this feels bad to approach in writing. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't ever write about, but it usually means that it needs more thought. Maybe you need to journal about it. Maybe you need to do some therapy about it. Maybe you just need to live a few more years and get a little bit more distance from that.
Perspective really helps.
Yeah. But I hope that you're able to come back to it when the time is right, as I feel like I was able to come back to my big stuff when the time was right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I also think that so often it's through the process of writing it that you find the voice. Like,
yes, I feel like when you wrote all your little genderqueer comics, that really, you found a way to express yourself. And I have an early set of comics on Palm Magazine. I don't even know. I hope they're still around.
I think it's still up.
They might have just gone digital only, but about endometriosis that really helped me figure out how I wanted to say what I wanted to say. My agent likes to say that I speak like Sephiroth sometimes when I write. I do, and I need to learn how to use regular words.
I mean, yeah, self-editing is also a learned skill. And if you are working in comics in particular, in general, comics are better when there's more pictures than words on a page.
I feel like that is a hurdle that a lot of people who have not written comics do not understand. Is like, I love my wife. She is very wordy on the page and she writes beautifully. Her prose are fantastic. And so it's like, I don't want to cut all these words, but you're being duo specific and I need you to choose one or the other, or
maybe we're writing an illustrated novel, not a comic at this time.
Also good. Those are great. So yeah, cut down on the words.
I personally find part of why I think comics have become my main tool or type of expression is partly because the form demands concision. And I find that really useful in the editing process. I too feel like the first draft is generally, I almost always write like a solid paragraph that can be just completely cut before I get to what the actual first line of the piece needs to be. But I have to write that sort of like junk intro paragraph first, just to be like, just to clear the stream or whatever. And then
get it out.
You got to get it out. Got to get it out of the pencil. And then you can find, and then you reach, okay, this is where the story actually needs to start. And then you can go from there. Yeah.
Yeah. We just agree each other a lot. So we just sit on the phone and we'll just
I hope you guys are enjoying. We talk on the phone for probably on average 6 to 8 hours a week. So you're getting a little peek into that.
That many?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Because we call like twice a week for like 3 hours.
That's true.
Anyway,
we both work from home, so
we
we're
both
just
work from
working
home.
and
yeah. So one of the topics you had thought might be interesting or that you might have something to say about is like you can figure out what you want to say and you figured out how you want to say it, and then people can still have a completely different read. They will bring their own meaning to the work.
It's the once you've written it, it's like no longer yours. It's the audience's. So there's lots of different interpretations, which I'm sure you've experienced quite a bit with your book.
Can you think of an example in your work too, or they're not at the top?
I mean, other than the hat thing, which I was still like, I mean, the Luke is gay comic is, first of all, it's my Luke is gay, which is personal. It's like, yes, this is mine. I had a British guy tell me that I ruined his childhood, which I was like, I'm in England, I guess, because that's very blunt. I mean, I feel like Americans are more blunt, but, people get really protective of things that they've projected onto for so long. And they, I think, don't understand that you can have a different, and like, George Lucas, I am reading your twink the way I want to read him and not, So, I'm like trying to think of any other comic I've ever written.
That's okay. If one comes to you, you can throw it in. But
blurt it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We have also, both of us have worked at a lot of different lengths. So you have mentioned like
Yes.
3-panel comics, 4-panel comics. We've both done more of an essay length piece that was meant to be published online or in an anthology, something that's probably in the range of like 4 to 8 pages or like maybe 10 to 30 panels, kind of what I would consider an essay length.
Yeah.
And then we are also both working on book length projects.
Almost.
No, you literally are. I have read the draft. Anyway, I was wondering if you had any thoughts you wanted to share about the difference of working at like different scale and lengths.
They're very forgiving. I mean, I feel like it's, if you have an idea that you think you can make a novel length, try writing 8 pages of it and see how you feel then. Because you might feel differently after that and figure out that you don't have anything to say. I recently wrote a piece about, it's for an upcoming anthology that I don't actually know the title of. I think it's Queer Food or something like that. And I wrote 8 pages about, I think I had health was the section I was assigned. And I, in trying to get pregnant, have been on a whole journey with my health. And I've learned a lot about food. And trying to fit that into 8 pages was a nightmare. And I was like, I need at least 200 of these to really get into the nitty gritty of everything. But also you analyze it and you're like, is this interesting to other people? They don't need to know about my macros. I don't even know what macros are. So that wasn't in the food lessons. But there's some ideas that can be, the brevity of just like a 4-panel comic is so freeing sometimes. It really, you write those and you're like, I love comics. Comics are great. And then you start a 4-page comic and you're like, I changed my mind.
No. Yeah, I love when an idea can be a single strip. Like, it's so satisfying to say, like, I said the whole thought in a piece that can fit in like one Instagram post or something. You know what I mean?
I was gonna say an Instagram post.
Yeah, exactly. And then, but I really do love working at sort of the essay length, and then we have a little bit more space, and then you're like, I can fit 3 examples. So I would consider my like evacuation comic I would consider like essay length, so 3 examples, and then there's ideas that sprawl out into like, oh no, this is a whole book of an idea, and I think that you start writing it, and if it just starts getting bigger and bigger, and if you keep not running into the end of what you had to say, then you're like, maybe this one's a book. When I pitched Genderqueer, I pitched it just on a series of diary comics. I did not write a script. I had not written an outline. And I remember asking my editor, how short can this be? Like, can it be like 100 pages? And the editor was like, let's put like 120 in the contract just to be safe. And like, it's okay if it's if it grows or shrinks. And then I turned in like a 260-page draft. So I was like, oh, I had a lot to say, actually. Yeah. But I didn't know everything I had to say until I wrote it. And that's another thing is like I mentioned, like sometimes the act of writing uncovers the story. And for me, because I was writing about my gender journey while I was also sort of actively coming out and doing some transition stuff, what I found was that writing about the gender stuff and then making the art or processing it through writing, it was like two different almost propulsive forces. And like a metaphor that came to me was like 2 feet on like bicycle pedals. So it's like one is like you have an experience and then you want to write about it. But then you've written about it and then you're like, oh shoot, like narratively, the most interesting thing that could happen next is like, I come out at work. But if I want to write about that in memoir, I have to then come out at work. So like, I was like, shoot, like the process of writing about this transition is like almost forcing me to take steps in my transition that I might have maybe lingered on and not gone as quickly, but I was like, I gotta write the next chapter though.
Sometimes you need a push. Sometimes you need a Sagittarius to just be like, just do it. Yeah. Also, that brings me to the question, how do you know where to end if you're actively going through it?
That is huge because you want the story to have a satisfying ending, but also you don't, you're still a living person. And like, for me, the end of Genderqueer actually changed. The last scene that's in the book got added very late in the process. The scene where I'm talking about whether or not I want to come out while teaching students like a one-off comics lesson. And I ended the book on this note of like, next time I will come out. And I was thinking of that as kind of a nice open-ended, like I'm still living, I'm still processing, I'm still learning, I'm still growing. I had not expected so many people to literally come up to me and be like, so did you? And I was like, the pandemic hit, and then I kind of stopped teaching, and like kind of yes, but also kind of no. I mean, I published the book. I'm sorry, there just isn't like a really clear-cut answer to that question.
Wait for book 2 for that answer.
I guess. But yeah, people really wanted to know. They felt like the end of the book was a question that they wanted an answer to, and which is just I had not predicted
just
that.
Like life.
Yeah, and like, are you open to speaking about that in terms of the book you're outlining at the moments? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, it's about pregnancy. I am not pregnant. And so the question of the book is it not satisfying if you're not pregnant at the end? Like if the journey of trying to get there does not succeed, is it okay to just like end it?
Is it okay to say
end the book?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
To say I spent 2+ years and many human dollars.
So many human dollars. The earth dollars.
Yeah. Pursuing a goal in spite of, like homophobic healthcare practices and discrimination and chronic illness and many roadblocks along the way.
Yeah. Yes. And then it's also on the subject of writing things that are relatable. It's also this, like you wrote in Genderqueer, these secrets are mine, where it's like you don't owe everybody everything. And people might find that dishonest, but memoir is not documentary. It is and even documentaries are subjective. So I feel like it's like if I do have a baby, do I owe them a picture of the baby at the end of the book? I don't think so. Thank you. No, I do not. I do not owe them that. But it's always something. I love stories that have just vibes endings, and I know that's an unpopular opinion. I love a sad movie for that reason. Yeah, you literally told me that your agent said your outline is too sad? Yes. I was told my outline is too sad, which it is. It was one of those things where I wrote it all down and then I just didn't look at it. And then going back to it, I did. And I was like, oh no, this is so sad. Which I was later told I am not a sad person inherently. I'm quite upbeat, but what did you call me? Downright delightful? Downright delightful and occasionally a hoot. Thank you. You're welcome. Maybe the greatest compliment I've ever received. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned, do you owe someone a photo of a future child? Obviously, I would say no as well. And one of the topics we wanted to talk about was privacy. Yeah. And respecting people's boundaries, because obviously, if you write memoir, you're going to include interactions with people in your real lives. Presumably. Presumably. And those people in your real lives will have differing comfort levels with being portrayed. Probably.
And some people in your life like might feel super, super uncomfortable at the idea of being written about, or the idea of being portrayed, visually, and then others may ask for things like, just change my name, or like, maybe draw me in a way that I couldn't be then recognized from a photograph. And anyone who's read David Sedaris, for example, will probably remember in at least one of his books, he literally has a scene where a family member goes, "Don't write about this, okay?" And then tells him something, and then it's literally in the book, including the family member saying, "Don't write about this," but there it is. So like, I thought about this a lot in writing Genderqueer because I wanted to make sure that that was a book that built bridges instead of burning them. I was like, I want this book to help me have stronger, clearer, like healthier relationships with people in my life. So I don't want to like expose anyone, or I don't want anyone to feel like they've been thrown under the bus or they've been made like the villain of my story, because that's just not.
Because it's happened to other people who've written memoirs in the past
Yes.
too.
But it's not the kind of book I want to write,
No.
and it isn't accurate to my life either, I wouldn't
No.
say. But like, so for my book, I did my very best to show every single person who has appears in my book and has like a line of dialogue. I showed them a draft version of the page that they're on or the scene that they're in, to get their just so they would know kind of what was coming.
Consent.
To get their consent for the appearance. And also because so much of it was written from memory, I let them say, "Hey, that's not how I remember that." Like, they were there too and say, like, I remember that differently. And very few people actually asked for any kind of change. Most people just saw it and were like, "Oh, that's great." Or like, you made me look cute. Or, like most people were very chill about it. But I had one friend, there's a scene where I sort of am coming out as like not cisgender for the first time, and it's to a male friend from high school, and I had drawn him kind of frowning a little bit in a silent panel as he thinks about it, and he literally just said, "You made me look a little angry, but I just sort of remember being confused. Could you maybe just like tweak the expression a little bit?" And I literally just turned the eyebrows from doop to doop. And then he was like, "Okay, that looks great." It was like the easiest edit ever. I changed like two lines. It wasn't even words, it just lines. But yeah, and that made him feel comfortable with the scene. So like, that's the kind of like very small but meaningful edit that helped someone who's in my life and that I wanted to continue being in my life feel comfortable with being written about.
Absolutely.
And that's, I think, something that's important to think about too, is it's just also just like making sure if something very interesting happens but you kind of weren't the main character of it.
Is it your story to tell?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I worried about that in writing about my mother, because she got pregnant with me when she was 19 in college and dropped out of college because she had to, because at that time you were not allowed to be pregnant in the Navy. And I'm writing all of this down, and then I'm like, oh no, this is her secrets. Do I want to tell my mom secrets on a national scale? If it, and it did involve sitting down with her, and basically the thumbnails were super duper rough. So I read it all to her, and she was like, "That's accurate as to what happened." And I was like, "Great. Okay. So I can just," and she's like, "Yep." And I'm like, "Okay." So it all worked out, but it is very scary because it is not necessarily your secrets at the end of the day. And people do remember things differently. Like I'm the oldest of 5, and the second oldest is my brother, and we have very different memories of our childhood. For God only knows why. He's very self-centered, so I think
he remembers his version of the story.
Yes. Exactly. Yes.
You had shared to me an example from the book your wife is also working on. Do you think, can we share that when she's not here?
Yes. She's upstairs. And
we are tabling next to each other at tables or booths 609 and 610 also, if you want to continue this conversation later on. But yeah.
Yes, she works in the funeral industry. She's a funeral director, and a lot of the people that she wants to write about still work in the industry, and she wants to make sure that they can keep doing that because it's an exhausting job and no one wants to do it. So she has decided to draw everybody with object heads. One of them is like a milk carton and one of them is sunshine, just based on the vibes of the person. I think one of them is a basset hound because he's just so sad. Full droopy. Yes, but I mean, it is a good way to, that's the beauty of comics. Comics are so freeing because you can interpret things in such specific ways and they can't get mad. They're like, I don't know. It's a dog. It's not you. He looks exactly like you and worked at the same place at the same time, but it's not you.
Yeah, it's not you. It's not you. Yeah, this is Caitlin, Ashley's wife, who I'm very excited to read more about this, her experience of becoming a licensed funeral director right in the early years of COVID, and
yes,
what that was.
She graduated from funeral director school, and then she went straight into COVID, essentially. So, yeah.
But yeah, I really love that idea of basically not portraying people realistically as one way to respect their privacy.
Give them a persona.
Yeah. Or an object-sona. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's obviously we love comics. We're big comics nerds, and I have definitely found comics to be an extremely sort of friendly and approachable and like powerful media, also as like a trans person. So like you can just draw yourself however you want. Before I got top surgery, I just drew myself without boobs because I was like, I don't want them. Why am I going to draw them? And that kind of ability to self-represent in a way that feels really authentic to you. And in comics, I mean, you can do this in writing as well, but like if you write a prose novel or a prose memoir, the author or the reader rather is imagining some version, probably if they're a visual thinker, of what you or the people in the book look like. But if you draw a comic, like you can really self-direct what the reader's experience is. Like you portray yourself and the people around you and the world around you the way that you see it. Yeah.
Which helps inform the story a lot of the time, because then you can extrapolate outwards.
I think especially for any author who has any type of marginalized identity that has maybe not been well represented in mainstream media so far, it can be really powerful to self-represent in that way. Another teacher we both had in grad school was Tibui, who wrote the memoir "The Best We Could Do" about her family emigrating to the U.S. from Vietnam during the Vietnam right around the Vietnam War. And she told us many times that book was inspired by the fact that as a young person, she didn't see a single sort of like even balanced or fair, let alone sympathetic portrayal of a Vietnamese person in any American media, literally at all. And so she was like, I guess I have to write my own book because no one is writing like a well-rounded human portrait of this.
No. So I'm blanking on the name of the other professor who also
GB Tron?
Yes.
Yeah, Viet America. Yeah. Yeah, we had some really wonderful. I entered grad school with a fiction project and left a memoirist, partly because we had so many good professors who were like memoir authors, and I was like, oh, I see what's going on here. It's
a good entry point. It's very much write what you know. It's like, I guess I know my life, kind of. I'm learning.
Oh, and then one other topic, kind of rolling back to the sort of privacy concern. We should talk about the choice of whether or not to publish under a pen name.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's been a big struggle for me specifically, because it's like, this is very personal. It's not that I'm ashamed to put my name on it, but my last name is very common in certain parts of the country. I have a lot of cousins. I have a lot of people I don't talk to on that side for reasons. A lot of people I love on that side, but it definitely, there's a weight to it. My name has a weight to it. And so it's not that I want to protect their identities so much as like, do I want to associate this with this empire of dirt? No. No,
this sprawling family. Yes.
They're truly lovely people. They're just so strange. And
a few people in the audience can relate.
You got weird families? Yeah. It's like quite eclectic, mixed race, indigenous, black, just really, and like I'm like the pastiest person. So it's a interesting identity struggle, and ultimately I think I have to put my name on the book because I want to talk about that, because part of if you do not have sperm in your relationship and you have to acquire some, you have to choose, and it can get very eugenicsy where you're like, this guy's a professor at MIT and this guy's a astronaut, and you're like, oh my God, healthy? I want like a healthy person who, that I did struggle with what, like my grandfather is black, and I was like, do I get a black sperm donor so that my baby looks more like my grandfather and his entire side of the family? Is it weird? And then my brother was like, you have to read Killing the Black Body. And then I read it and I was like, oh my God, I have to think even more about this. So I'm not even ready to write a comic about it yet. Yes. Did you consider, I know that you, we've many times discussed how your last name is fairly unique inside the country. And so you have a Delete Me.
Yes, I do subscribe to the service Delete Me. This is not an ad. It's interesting. It literally never occurred to me to publish under a pen name. And that is kind of shocking in retrospect.
Do you think it's because you started in fiction?
Quite possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, I have a fairly unique name. Pretty much everyone whose last name in this whole country is Kobabe is related to me, and there's like 10 of us. Like it literally, there's almost no Kobabes in the United States. I think I'm the only person with the name Maia Kobabe publishing in English on the entire internet. So I'm very Googleable. And I, when I was first starting out in very early kind of self-publishing comics, that felt like an asset, like to be searchable.
Googleable.
Exactly.
Those Google
Exactly. And so
thingies.
I did just slap my real name on all of my work. The primary and my initial work was mostly fiction. Like the fantasy project I'd worked on as my master's thesis. And
I don't know if you in undergrad, when I was there, we had to take a class in like branding, and they were like, put your name on everything. It was like Tumblr was the thing back there. Shout out to Tumblr.
we're still there.
Yeah, Instagram, Twitter, RIP. And it was like, just make your name the same on all of them. And the easiest thing to do is just use your name.
Yeah, you got that from professors like telling you
Yes,
to do that.
They were like,
yeah.
cross brand promotion, just do it. Yeah.
I actually didn't really get that feedback because I went to a liberal arts school instead of an art school for undergrad, and so I did not have, I don't know, a class on personal branding. But I do think part of it might be one of my aunts is a photographer, and she was sort of an early supporter of my artwork when I was a child. And she, whenever I gave, a card or a handmade drawing to anyone in the family, she'd be like, sign it, sign it, sign it. She would really like pester me like until I signed the piece, because she was like, don't like let your art go out without your name on it. And I think it's, from having been a freelance photographer, she was like, people have to know where to find it if they like it and they want to buy one or something. So I kind of as a teenager got like badgered into this habit of like signing even like a little doodle that I gave to someone. And so I went into college in my early art career just with this habit of signing my work with my real name. And part of it is also that when I published Genderqueer, I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't really think people were going to read it. Like I genuinely didn't really think anyone who didn't already know me or was only one step removed from me would read it. So I didn't think it was going to be a big issue. And in retrospect, I maybe slightly wish that I had, if not published under a pen name, changed some more names. A couple of the names in the books were changed
Like
at the
my
request.
name?
Yeah, your full name, including your middle initial, is in my book.
I have had people from high school reach out and be like, is this you? And I'm like, yes, it is.
I
now
put
you know.
Yeah, like the person who became my brother-in-law, I put his full name and his place of employment. What was I thinking?
They're like, I'm going to dox the crap out of him.
Like, in retrospect, I'm like, why did no one tell me to think about this more? Because it's so wild, because when we were publishing it, it went through a very strict legal review. But the only thing they were worried about was copyright infringement. Like, people ask me sometimes, like, did your publisher or anyone pressure you to maybe like take out like the dildo scene or like the menstrual blood? No, nobody brought up any of those. They only brought up
David Bowie.
They made me take out David Bowie because they thought we might get sued by the David Bowie estate. No, we got sued for a completely different reason. Anyway, whatever. But yeah,
Hindsight's 2020.
Hindsight's 2020 indeed. But yeah, so I do, I don't know. I feel like, if I had started using a different name than my legal name, like if I had switched names like in high school or something, like I considered doing, but didn't, I think that it would have maybe made sense to sort of publish under my chosen name rather than my legal name.
Yeah.
But more than that, for me, I do slightly wish I had changed more people's names who are in the book. But luckily, it hasn't actually led to negative consequences for anyone of my loved ones or family. Yet.
Knock on
So
wood.
I did want to mention also, like, again, to potential writers and memoirists in the audience, especially if you are queer or trans or another marginalized identity that perhaps might be persecuted by the federal government coming soon, please don't let that scare you off from writing. Please don't let fear silence you before you have even spoken. Because one of the most important things when facing fascism is not to comply in advance. That being said, I come from a place of pretty extreme safety as a white middle-class person with supportive parents who lives in California. So I feel like I can be very out and open with a lot of safety, and I never had to worry that coming out would threaten my job, my health care, my family relationships, my living situation. Right. I didn't have to worry about any of that. So do take your own identity and sort of your own, I guess, risk factors into account. But I do think that don't let it scare you off from writing. But if writing under a pen name seems like more of a reasonable precaution or just something you would like to do, it's also a great opportunity to just change the name people are going to know you by if you want to just try out a new name.
Test out some new names. Like giving a barista your name at a coffee shop, just be like, I don't know if this works. Like, I've never liked, my last name is fine. I've never liked my first name. Definitely one of those, I was one of 6 Ashleys in the
Any
6th grade.
class.
Yes. Absolutely. And the entire time I've been like, this is not I had a roommate in college who I met, and they were like, oh, good. I was worried based on this assignment that you would be a biatch because your name is Ashley, but you're chill. And I was like, thank you. I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are worse things.
Yeah. A memoir that I read and enjoyed very recently, which is not a comic, but it's prose, is Hijab Butch Blues by Lamia H. Wonderful memoir, especially if you are interested in sort of the intersection of religion and queerness, or a story about finding your queerness, specifically within Islam. It's beautifully written, and the author published under a pen name, and they write very eloquently about the choice of a pen name and how the pen name actually freed them up to speak more clearly and speak more bravely and truthfully, and that it did, I think that they maybe struggled a little bit with the idea that using a pen name was like a cop-out, but then they realized no, it's a tool, and using this tool allows me to be more effective. So find the tools that are effective to you.
I feel like you've maybe just to me, you've spoken in the past about because you have so much privilege, you have the space to publish things that might be more agitating, we'll say, because you have so much support. So if a pen name gives you support, do that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was very aware in writing genderqueer that I was kind of setting myself up into the role of expert on non-binary stuff and maybe gender transition stuff, and that could very well lead to people asking me fairly uncomfy questions, whether that was, coming from genuine curiosity or kind of a place of ignorance. And I really thought about that. Is that a thing I want to take on? Is that something I feel like I sort of have the energy and the spoons for? And I decided yes. Again, I have so much specifically family support. I still live rent-free with my parents in my mid-30s, which I try to make a point to mention often when I speak publicly, because it is one of the main reasons I'm able to be a full-time freelance artist in the state of California, is that I don't pay rent. And I felt like because I have this very strong support system, that is if I can smooth the road for other people who've maybe have less of that support system, I would like to do that. I would like to be that person who's smoothing the road for others if I can. Yeah.
You can volley the questions for people who don't have the energy to, all right, we have 10 minutes. What do you want to talk about?
We have run out of all of the notes I made.
I knew this would happen.
No, that's okay. Do you have anything else we haven't touched on yet that you want to talk about?
God, no. Neopets.
Neopets? Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Are you gonna end up writing a memoir piece about your relationship with Neopets?
Probably not.
No?
But I mean, that's like a short form comic where I'm like, I used to love Neopets, and then I wasn't allowed to be on it, and now we're just like
You're an adult.
we're being autistic on Maine. We're drawing Neopets on Maine. We ball is essentially the vibe. Let's take that away from this.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Yes, yes, Neopets. I mean, I have literally 2 different zines on my table that are about K-pop, and
It's true.
I mean, one of them is just a fanzine. It's Rezo printed. It's a work of love. The other one though is also it's a memoir piece about like what this kind of fan community meant to me, specifically during the sort of most intense lockdown years. And I think that's another place that our work intersects, is using sort of a pop culture theme as a lens to talk about a more emotional topic. Yeah.
Love tiny zines about, like, I bought one that was about Merge Dragons, which is the only phone game I have. We got Merge Dragons fans in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that zine. It's amazing. So just people want to read what you have to say.
Yes.
At the end of the day,
I specifically do.
Maya wants to read about it.
I love memoir. It is one of my most read genres. And when I tell you that me encouraging everyone in the audience to write your memoirs, especially if you were like gay or trans or disabled or like an immigrant or neurodivergent, it's selfish.
Maya's gonna give you money, please.
I want to read it because also I read a lot. Maybe even too much. I've read 150 books this year.
Yeah.
So I could run out of my gay memoirs. So please continue feeding them to me. I'm hungry. I need them to get through the day.
Speaking of hunger, we'd be in college and like it was like 8 hours of class a day. And we'd be taking our lunch break and I would want to talk to Maya and Maya would just be like nose deep in a book.
This
and I'm
is
just
my
like,
reading time.
I would like to talk about everything we've talked about in class today. There was a library of comics in the classroom. That was the problem. So mine would just like...
I need my mental health reading break 3 times per day.
Like a meal.
And generally I read while I'm eating, and it's my little, like, I'm not looking at my phone, I'm not answering email.
It's good.
I'm not talking to anybody. I am intaking some content and having my little quiet reading, a snacking time.
And that's important to do as a memoirist, to bring it back around, because sometimes people have told stories in ways that you would never have thought of, and it's very helpful. I can't think of any examples, so don't ask me. Usually it's framing devices. I'm like, I didn't know you could tell it that way. Yeah. All right. You want to open it up to questions?
I mean, I guess we could take like 2 questions. Are we doing questions? I don't know. I'll just keep chatting if not.
Nope.
No. Okay.
Excellent.
I mean, I could start listing off beloved memoirs. Okay. Pass the mic over.
New one. You get a new microphone.
Hi, I guess this is more of a comment than a question, but
no.
Can we just will you acknowledge, Maya, for once and for all, that you are a Fae jester and you do feed off of memoirs, so we all need to make you grow stronger.
Yes, it is true. Yeah, it is one of the sources of my powers. Yeah. Are there any other questions in the audience? Okay, yes.
Hi. Okay, Ashley, you said something about like, I know my life, kind of. I am someone who has a bad memory and lots of holes in it. Have you guys ever encountered something that you're like, I really want to write about this, and then partway through you're like, I don't know if this is how it happened or if it happened at all? And how have you navigated that?
Wonderful question.
That's such a good question. It's everything's subjective. So however you tell it is the truth as far as the world is concerned. I try to just be honest in the writing and be like, I don't remember this, but this is how I remember it.
Yeah, I take a lot of notes on my own life. Like I've been journaling off and on since I was like 12, And I also like have at various periods when I wasn't journaling, wrote like long letter-like emails to friends. And I literally go back and rely on my notes because I think I remember things well. And then I go back and read it and I was like, well, so much more happened that I did not remember. And honestly, the hardest part of genderqueer was writing the stuff that happened before I was 12 because I didn't have notes. And like there's a scene where I go to like a beach in like 3rd grade with my dad and I like took my shirt off, which seemed totally normal at the time. And I got scolded by my teacher. And I asked my dad, like, do you remember this? And he was like, I mean, I remember that I went on that trip, but like he didn't really remember. So I was like, because I kind of want to fact check, like, do you remember the teacher responding this way? And he was like, I got nothing. I'm sorry.
I will say, as someone who wants to write this pregnancy journey book, I took so many notes. And so part of it, and I don't take notes well, so it was just like a Google Doc with just like, it's like 50 pages long because I would just like write like doctor made me sad. And so now I can go back and be like, oh God, that doctor made me sad.
But I would also say specifically, obviously we know from psychology that like both illness and trauma affect memory, right? And if you are going to write a story that includes themes of either illness or trauma, memory holes or memory gaps may be part of it. I think, yeah, I would say if that is the type of story that you are telling, kind of being honest and finding a way either in words or images to sort of represent there is this fuzzy gap here, and I would love to maybe have some clues as what's in there, but I simply don't, and that is just the reality of what I have lived through, and just being as honest as you can about that, because that too will be relatable to some readers.
Deeply
and
relatable.
some readers may then be very comforted by a story that includes gaps, if their story too includes gaps.
Yeah. I have a story that my brother, we could be done. I have a memory from my brother about a very specific conversation that we had with our father at one point, and it's very funny because we remember exactly what he said exactly the same way, but he remembers it being in the car, and I remember it being at a house in the living. Like I can tell you what the couch looked like, and so it is like, does it matter where it was, or does it matter that we remember what he said? Like the emotional weight of it is the same ultimately. So yes.
Maybe one more question?
No. Hello.
Oh, I guess all the way down at the end. Hello.
Are you a has-been hotel? I love that even more. You're beautiful.
Thank you. I just wanted to tell you, it's not technically a question, but the dedication to the beanie. But I have the same dedication to wearing my top hats as you have to wearing your beanie.
Good.
I do not take my main top hat, Lizzie, off until it is time to actually sleep.
Yes. Do you have a sleeping top hat? Because I would respect that greatly.
Not yet, but I plan on making one. I shall have one.
Wait. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming.
Yeah. This was very fun. I enjoyed talking to you in this setting.
Yes.
I look forward to talking to you tonight and also tomorrow, and for the 4 extra days I'm staying at your house,
To watch K-pop.
and then for 2 to 3 hours per week for all the weeks, hopefully for the entirety of our lives. Yeah, cheers. Thank you, everyone.